is now 4:33. So welcome to the Cross Canada Chardonnay Terroir tasting. What a thrill. Oh my gosh, my name is Thomas Bachelder and I'm from Bachelder. And we're here in Niagara and we've got three people from across Canada. And I think to celebrate this on this great virtual but also real cool climate Chardonnay celebration day, we're going to invite people, panelists from the East Coast, the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean. So here we go with Josh Horton from Nouvelle-Écosse, Josh Horton, and he'll be coming on in a sec here from, hey Josh!
Hello everyone. Yeah, I'm Josh Horton from the head winemaker here at Lightfoot&Wolfville Vineyards. We're located in the Annapolis Valley, Nova Scotia. I believe that makes me probably the most eastern of all of us, for sure. Here in Nova Scotia, it's a maritime climate. We tend to see a lot of rainfall, short growing season. What we find here in Nova Scotia, what you find is most of the vineyards are located in the Annapolis Valley. In microclimates, usually on south-sloping slopes, close to the proximity of water. We're very close to the ocean here, and it helps moderate our winter temperatures, keeping us, moderately warm. Here at Lightfoot&Wolfville, we manage and make wine from about 50 acres of certified organic and biodynamic fruit. And yeah, we're extremely passionate about Chardonnay. 90% of the planting we have here at Lightfoot&Wolfville is Vitis vinifera. So that, yeah, we're definitely heavy with Vitis vinifera, and yeah, very passionate about Chardonnay and very excited to taste through these wines and kind of get a feel for the terroir across Canada. So yeah, I think get us started. Don't know where Thomas went.
Yeah, I'm here. I had to turn off the air conditioner. I could barely hear you. That's the kind of summer we're having here. We've got all air conditioners on full. Yeah, so we're about to have some bubbly wine. Moving a little further west, we have Michel Robert from my hometown of Quebec, province of Quebec. Salut Michel, hello.
Hello, salut Thomas. Hello everyone.
My family comes from...
for having me, Thomas. And hello Josh.
Hello.
Yeah, Michel and I come from the same place. I come from what we call l'Estrie, or the Canton de l'Est, or the Eastern Townships, and sort of Mount Rougemont is sort of the Montérégie, which is the end of the Montreal region, beautiful mountains. And I thought of making wine there once, but you did it, Michel.
Yes, we did. We started this journey back in 2007, planted the first vines there, and planted our first Chardonnay that you're going to taste today in 2008. And so yeah, we're a young industry in Quebec. People don't know the region very well, but we're a young industry, less than 30 years old, and we do wine at our place since 10 years. Now we grow roughly 55 acres of grapes. Probably 85% are hybrids. Some names probably that you've never heard in West, but we grow a lot of hybrids, have a lot of success, and we've got a small parcel of Chardonnay, roughly 1.5 acres, that we, as I mentioned, planted in 2008, and we're having a great success with this product. So very anxious to hear your comments from experts from rest of Canada.
Well, that's cool. Well, we've got lots of time to talk about that, and I have to introduce one of my old buddies, both him and his wife, Stephanie, we've known for a while. Stephanie runs all the marketing out at Tantalus, and David runs all the winemaking and vines. Bonjour, David.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Hi, Josh. Hi, Michelle. Hi, Thomas.
Hello.
So, David, tell us a little bit about Tantalus, including how you arrived there very briefly.
Sure. Well, Tantalus is situated just outside the city of Kelowna in the Okanagan Valley here in British Columbia. Basically, we 73 acres of which 48 are planted to Riesling, Pinot Noir, and a decent amount of Chardonnay now. Chardonnay is a passion of mine and a passion of the owner, Eric Savix. So we decided to plant a little bit more Chardonnay over the last couple of years and increase our offerings with Chardonnay. We currently grow in a very sustainable manner. We're looking at biodiversity as one of our biggest mantras. If we can have a really biodiverse environment, then nothing gets out of balance, and we can get away with less sprays and have an overall healthy ecosystem is what we're looking to do, and slowly achieving, although that takes years to actually put into practice properly. As far as me coming to Tantalus, well, I married a Canadian, and she dragged me over here to Canada, where when I left New Zealand, I thought Canada was a place that they made ice wine, and that was about it. And I was gravely mistaken. I ended up falling in love with this part of the world, and this will be my 12th vintage on this site at Tantalus, and no intent of going anywhere right now. This is a wonderful place to grow grapes and to make wine.
I thought I detected a very South Okanagan accent in your voice, so that must be it. I think we met years ago first at the IPNC, International Pinot Noir Celebration, which would be next Saturday. I haven't checked out if they're doing a virtual thing, but a shout out to them if any of them are listening. By way of introduction, why don't we have this bubbly, if all of you would pop it. I'm ready. Let's, Josh, maybe you tell us 1, 2, 3, and we'll pop it at the right time. I've got my hood off. You know, the IPNC is what gave me the idea when I moved here from Oregon, because I was on the board of the International Pinot Noir Celebration to start the Cool Climate Chardonnay celebration. And so that's where I also met David, I believe, and going down to Steamboat and all those things, right? Which we can explain another. Are you ready, Josh?
3, 2, 1. Let's do it.
Woohoo! There is the proof. 4 little wineries that sent their wines across the world. It's one country, but how many kilometers from Lightfoot and Wolfville to Tantalus, northern Okanagan?
I'm guessing about 5,500, something like that.
Yeah, roughly. Yeah.
So cheers, Canada.
Cheers.
And we're going to be putting this whole thing up on the internet in as many ways as we can find. And I want to explain why I wanted to do this. I4C is a great excuse to do this, but the idea is this. As you know, you may know about me, Mary and I have lived a lot and worked a lot in Burgundy and in France. Do you know there are some people in Bordeaux who really love white Burgundy? And there are some people in Burgundy who like red Bordeaux. But there wouldn't be many Bordelais who would like Pinot Noir. You can correct me. And there wouldn't be many Burgundians who would be really big on white Bordeaux. And so the great vulnerability and the great sort of thing we can never overcome as a country is that our grape types that we use, except for some hybrids, I guess, didn't evolve here like they did in France. But the glass is also half full. That same problem gives us a wonderful thing where we can pull all our terroirs together. And this is the first effort that I know of, where we are going to not just be 4 winemakers sitting here talking about how we make the wine. We'll give each other a bit on our terroir, what the stones are, and what is the aspect or, the tides or the rainfall that lends it. Then you're going to have 3 wine lovers who are also winemakers telling you what they get from your terroir. And that's totally worth it for me to ship them across. the country, which we all did at our own expense with no subvention en français, no subsidy. But the thing is also that when Canada travels as Team Canada, we all wished it was more of a Team Canada. And I've been on the road with you guys before, and you've come to the I4C, and I got to tell you, especially in England, and Team Canada, not just Ontario, was slated to go to Norway, Finland, and of course, England and New York City this year, thanks to the feds and thanks to WAMO on our side, and of course, Wines of BC, Nova Scotia, Quebec, and all that stuff. Had we gone, Team Canada would have come even more to the forefront, okay? And so I'm just going to nail down that point. I think I said it poorly. When France goes to market as France, they go as fantastic regions with fantastic individual appellations. None of them hardly any of them go to market with the same grape types. Maybe it's hard to grow Cabernet Sauvignon in Quebec and Nova Scotia, and maybe there's things that you grow that the Okanagan can't grow, but we can all grow Chardonnay, and we can all grow Pinot Noir. And my thought is, in tasting Chardonnay today, at the same time that we would have been standing in our tents right here in Niagara, had the world not gone crazy, we would have actually been allowed to shake hands and see each other. And because, you know, and maybe even kiss on two cheeks in the old days. And those days shall come again après la libération. But right now, what we can do is let's not focus so much on Chardonnay or our techniques, and let's focus on terroir. And with that, Josh, would somebody tell us a bit about your terroir a little more, and then we'll tell you what we think of your two wines. We're going to taste both wines now of yours.
Okay, so first of all, our terroir is, like I mentioned, very maritime influenced. A shorter growing season, maybe not shorter than Quebec, I'm not quite sure, but definitely shorter than Ontario and BC. We definitely see a lot of rainfall, so a lot of moisture, definitely in the spring, and sometimes we see a lot in the fall. Where you'll find most of the vineyards located are on south slopes here. The soils mainly are made up, definitely all our Chardonnay is grown on a glacial till, made up of mostly like a sandy loam. There's no limestone or anything like that, but we do see quite a bit of slate and shale in our soils. So our soils are pretty good, pretty good draining. Yeah, you know, growing Chardonnay here, it's all about finding the special sites that can withstand, you know, stay a little bit warmer, to be able for Chardonnay to survive, you know, winter temperatures. So yeah, close to the proximity of water, you'll find vineyards here that help moderate temps. And yeah, it's an interesting place to grow vines. It's fast, it's vigorous. We just finished flower here. I don't know where you guys are in Ontario and BC, but I'm sure you're definitely a lot further ahead.
Wow.
A little bit, yeah.
That's humbling. That's super humbling.
You know, and then I got some connections in Niagara. It's always really interesting following in the fall, because sometimes we're harvesting Chardonnay very close to Ontario. Now I know in the last couple of vintages, you know, there's been a further stretch, but we definitely have a shorter season. So yeah, it's definitely a unique region. We're definitely on the edge.
And I would love to, as the sort of kind of moderator, we're just a bunch of winemakers getting together here, but as a kind of moderator, it strikes me as really fun to flip to the far west to ask David, not only how much Nova Scotia wine he has had, but has he had bubbly? And what's your take on the terroir that you taste in this wine?
For sure. So, I mean, I've probably had more Nova Scotian than most out here, mainly because I've swapped with Jean Bimoire a few times and with Lightfoot. I organize a Pinot Noir celebration out here, and Lightfoot&Wolfville sent me some wines last year, which we showed on a panel for a similar kind of thing, a coast-to-coast look at Pinot, which was fantastic. I think it was their 2015 Ancient Méthode Pinot from memory. So I have a fair understanding, but I've never actually been out there on what the Annapolis Valley looks like, and the Bay of Fundy and the huge tides that that affect you know, that area and help form the terroir. The bubbly, first off, you know, the nose just lends me almost towards England in a lot of ways. It's got that lovely toasty sort of creamy biscuity thing of long or of a lot of patience. So several years longer on lees, I presume, smelling and tasting it than you legally are required to do. It's a 2014 Blanc de Blanc. It's delicious. It's got screamingly high acidity in a lovely way. I think that lends it to a very sort of sea breezy mineral feel, even though there's weight from that lees aging. So yeah, delicious wine. My staff are all gunning to taste these wines after this session, so they're going to be very pleasantly surprised with the flavor, length, and overall quality of this bubble. Really, really good. And then, Thomas, do you want me to cover the Chardonnay as well?
Well, let's finish with this, and we'll flip back to you for the Chardonnay.
Okay, yeah, sure.
And remember, we're dead in an hour from now, because we really want anybody who's watching us to go over to the I4C Worldwide Zoom toast. So in the interest of brevity, and I'll try to be brief sometimes, uncharacteristically, I think if any of us say nothing to add, that'll be taken by the rest of us in the best possible way. And so I have a little something to add. Do you have anything to add on the bubbly, Michel?
No, well, just question for Josh in general. And do you need to, in Nova Scotia, do you need to protect the vines during the winter time, or the effect of the sea gives you a cooler climate, or protects the vines?
Yeah, you know, we just do a little bit of hilling. We definitely don't bury our vines. I would say our average winter temp, like, or I should say not the average, but the lows that we've seen in the last couple of years, like we're seeing like -17, -18.
Okay.
We very rarely see anything close to -20. So it does seem to even stay a little more mild than, you know, some of the regions like up on the bench in Niagara. You know,
yes.
I don't think we're a new facility. We planted in 2009. I don't think we've seen a -21 here since we planted. So, yeah, you know, it's just what I notice is we definitely don't get the heat units that we see in the rest of Canada. Yeah. It tends to stay cool here.
I think as we go through this, that was a great comment, Michel. You just added a huge thing to this thing, which is as we all talk about our own wines and people ask us questions, we should talk about how winter kill can affect us. And I think, Josh, I may add that you guys are most, what's the word? You are most vulnerable in the spring, right?
Yes.
So with that, I'd like to give a little comment, which is, you know, my buddy, Peter Gamble, who helped start up both Lightfoot&Wolfville and Benjamin Bridge, you guys have had a lot of champagne consultants up running through Nova Scotia. And I know that I hosted the owners of Lightfoot&Wolfville over when I was in Burgundy, and we were trying to make them understand Burgundy. And I've got to say, you do have a very Burgundian house. I love your wines. And I love everybody's wines here, I guess, or else we wouldn't be here. By the way, these 4 wineries are all in the I4C. If you go to the I4C website, you'll see all of us in there. And so that's why we just wanted to have one from each province to keep it kind of neat and clean, because all of our provinces have many different regions. You know, of course, there's different parts of Quebec we could have heard from, Nova Scotia, and certainly Vancouver Island, and, you know, the plain near Vancouver, and Ontario has just as many different regions, but we're just keeping it simple for the moment. It's a big country to cover, and this is not meant to be a survey. But what astounds me is Peter Gamble, and I bring him up. He's married to Anne Sperling, and of course she has Sperling Vineyards also in the northern Okanagan, and they work on Versado in South America. But he figured out, and I think convinced Jerry of BB and Jean and hired Jean Benoit, who you referred earlier, that they should be doing bubbly, and they got in 2 different Champenois from California, and then a third one actually from Champagne, is my blurry memory. And you know, when they did those early tastings, I could not tell the difference between Benjamin Bridge, the quite early ones, and great ones like Comte de Champagne and other great Blanc de Blanc. Now, this is a 100% Chardonnay. This is 100% Chardonnay, right?
Yeah, 100% Chardonnay.
So, and this is my key, and this is the kind of thing I'm going to be talking about today, like the Stones, is I have nothing to add to what David said, and Michel, I agree with that. What I have to add is I was an early lover of L'Acadie grape, okay? And I think it's recently become legal in Ontario, which is very cool, because it is a hybrid that happened in Canada. And I know that also Michel makes L'Acadie, but, and I've helped a domain make vinifera that makes it up in Georgian Hills. And I gotta say, I've always liked that grape. And at one point, about the 5th time I tasted Benjamin Bridge, I found L'Acadie in it. Now, L'Acadie is in their Nova 7, but it's not in their Grand Vin. And so I realized with a start that what I had been tasting in L'Acadie was at least partially the Nova Scotia terroir. And that got me off to a jump. To make sure you understand me, another time somebody, I think it was probably Peter Gamble, pulled me an old Gruner Veltliner from Austria. And I said, I've nailed it. It's even from the Comtal. And he said, you're right. It's from the Comtal, and it's old, and it's Austrian, but it's Riesling. And I was like, what? I'm so happy. I got it wrong, but I saw the terroir before the grape. So that's kind of what I'm going about today. And I can taste that Nova Scotia taste, and I can't friggin' figure out what it is. It's not a sea salt. What is that?
It's the ocean. I always say it tastes like the ocean. It reminds me of home every time I have a Nova Scotia sparkling. It doesn't matter who produces it. It's strong. It's a very strong terroir for sure.
How far are you from the Bay of Fundy?
Like I don't know, half a kilometer.
just far enough to feel good about the high tides.
Yeah, exactly. And we've never seen any salt spray or anything like that. We're far enough away that we're not seeing any salt spray or anything in our vineyard. But yeah, we're very close. All our vineyard sites, I feel like if you could throw a baseball hard enough, you could probably land it in the water. But
wow.
Yeah.
Well, David, would you take us from the West Coast? Tell us about the Chardonnay. You get to start. We'll have somebody else start first next time. We won't throw you under the bus every time.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, just going back to that, you know, my little tasting note on the bubble was that sea breezy, oceany thing, which you know I love that, and when I find it in any wine, and I find it in Nova Scotian wine a lot. So that really speaks to that terroir for sure. This Chardonnay, again, to me, the aromatics of it speak of that sea breeze again, that freshness that comes off a large body of water. And that's not to say that it's not concentrated. It's not a watery kind of aromatic or watery flavor, but there's something there that if I was tasting this blind, would be sending me somewhere coastal straight away, and somewhere very cool climate. It stays in that really nice sort of rindy, citrusy kind of realm of Chardonnay, rather than pushing out into the big tropical things that you can get in Chardonnay, which I really appreciate. I personally prefer the more acidic, lean styles of Chardonnay myself. So yeah, great job. Delicious.
Michel, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I like the freshness. I like the acidity of this wine. You know, the toasty notes, the apple. Really like it. You know, it's you don't. How long the oak barrel in this one, Josh?
So we tend to do all French oak, 20% new. Yeah, usually using a lot of neutral oak, third fill.
Yeah, we don't
definitely
feel it. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of larger format. We've moved to a lot of 500, 600 liter.
Yeah, same to us.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's a very Burgundian style, of course. I mean, I was so happy when I referenced meeting Lightfoot's over there in Burgundy. I think it was probably back in 15 or something, or 14, when they came out with this label, L'Ancienne, you know, like old style, or, you know, I think that stuff telegraphs your intention, and your intention is to be elegant and terroir. And I went to a great wine educators party, Peter Bodnerod, who many of you will know here in Niagara, great. Him and, you know, Chris Waters, for people talking about wine, they leave me dizzy. They're so firing on all levels. And Peter Bodnerod, amongst many others here in Niagara, but Peter Bodnerod handed me your Ancienne, the first vintage of the second one, blind, in the winter, outside around a campfire where there's about 50 bottles. And I said, oh, somebody brought a Burgundy to the party, you know. And of course, right here, I absolutely know it's not Burgundy. It's just another cool terroir expression of that style. And it's thanks to your mother rocks and, like you said, your CX position. I don't get as much of the same flavor here, probably because of the barrel ferment. Is there 0 barrel ferment in the bubbly? Or
no barrel aging on the bubbly. 100%.
Whenever Mary's taking questions for the folks out there listening. This is only going to happen in the live. Obviously, when we repost, you can't. Well, I guess you can ask questions written. But if you ever see me disappear from the screen, it's to pour Mary a glass. And I hope, you know, Mary's been my life and partner since the beginning of wine school. So I got to make sure she tastes these in real time. Yeah, I love this wine, and I think it has a great mineral finish. Still super young. How long do you think this might age? And by that I mean, how long will it continue to improve?
That's a tough question. We don't have a lot of benchmarks to kind of to put them up against. Everything in Nova Scotia with its acidity seems to be aging very well. Our first vintage was in 2013, and just recently opened one, and it's still showing as beautiful as the day I went to bottle. Yeah, I honestly don't know that question, but yeah, the sky's the limit, I think, with aging here in Nova Scotia.
Once I get used to the barrel fermentation characteristics, which I think maybe 2 or 3 more years in bottle, but now I've got used to it after a few swigs and a few spits, I do see that same minerality I first saw in Lackady coming through, and it's your signature. And what I wanted to say earlier is when I tasted later BBs in later setups, because they did a lot of these tastings showing the best champagnes against theirs, all blind. After 3 or 4 times, I could always pick it out because of that taste. But I think one of my favorite comments of today so far has been David's, who nailed it when he said it's like England. So I'm just going to couch that. The thing that's going on in Southern England is so happy and so wonderful. It's the same chalk streak that comes under La Manche, under the channel that starts in Champagne, and that kind of terroir thing is like the kind of thing we're talking about in Canada. How does the Quebec terroir resemble Southern Quebec resemble the Maritimes? How does Quebec come over here through Prince Edward County and get to Niagara? How are we all influenced by the Laurentian Shields, etc.? Less David out there for sure, but he's got another mountain to contend with. But my point is that Southern England wines, they're like 40 quid a bottle. They're not cheap, 40 pounds. But they're great. And I think yours are the closest thing to England or Champagne. It depends who made it and what year, you know. Anything to add, anybody else, before we switch over? We're going to take a quick flight from Halifax to the Montreal airport, socially distanced in the plane.
Yeah.
Michelle, what do you want to tell us? I'm going to go pour Mary.
Yeah, I'm going to pour my wine. Maybe just to add on this, in Quebec, the particularity of Chardonnay is that we have to protect it during the winter time. So we put geotextile. So it's a lot of work. It's a small parcel, as I mentioned, 1.5 acres, and roughly 20% oak. New barrels. We've switched recently to larger formats. As Josh mentioned, 400 and 500 liters. But yeah, we've contrary to Nova Scotia, we get warm temperature in Quebec. Season's probably a little bit less long than Ontario. But what kills us is during the winter time, temperature drops to minus 25, minus 28. Not for very long, but for, let's say in February, for a few days. But it's enough to, if we would not protect using geotextile, the vines, it would kill it. So basically, it forms like a tent over and then the heat from the soil comes in and gives like a difference between 7 and 8 degrees. And when you combine the geotextile with the snow, you get a decent coverage to protect your vines. So that's the particularity of Quebec. The season is fairly long. A lot of heat. We're like 40 minutes east of Montreal. So right from the slopes of Mount Rougemont, southeast exposure. So nice sun near the hill. Right. Our vines are against the mountain, and the soil is rocks. It's earth and rocks, and it's funny. The other side of the street, it's sand, and millions years ago, it was the Sea of Champlain. And it's funny, you cross the street, and on one side of the street, Thomas, you came at our place, it's sand, and on the other side, it's rock, and you're on the side of the mountain. So, and we can see, we've got parcel of Chardonnay in the sand and in the rock and near the mountain. It's totally different. Totally different. You get the minerality. Sorry,
it's so hard to say.
It's not a good word in French, but anyway, that's 2017. Cheers.
Cheers. Well, I'd like Josh to start. So taste, Josh. I'm going to give you a little second here. I want to say something about Quebec. When I started, my Quebecois friends always tell me, I go about 12 times a year home, and they always tell me, why don't you make wine here? And I'm like, yeah, I'm not busy enough. But seriously, when I got out of school in 1993, that was before David and Josh were born. But when I got out of school back in 93, I got to tell you, I looked all over Quebec. I looked in the Finger Lakes. I looked in Quebec to establish. I looked in Prince Edward County. I thought, Christ, we're going to have a divorce if we move to Prince Edward County. It's tough. We know it's great like Quebec, but by Jesus, you better have some money for those tough years. And we were old enough when I got out of school. I went to school when I was 30, that I didn't want to eat salad for 3 months, because my vines failed that year and I had no product to sell. So I just thought, we did a lot of interviews out in the Okanagan and even on Vancouver Island. And by God, we ended up going to Oregon. Like, who would have funked that? And then back to Merceau. But I've thought a lot about Quebec over the years. And the young ones always ask me, why didn't you go? And I'm like, man, that's a long time ago, 1993. It wasn't quite as developed. I made the decision to go with Pinot Noir and then see where life would take me. And I think the same might have happened with Mr. Patterson. And but for Quebec, you must know this. Montreal is part of what they call the Montérégie. And my family is from the hills, which are the Vermont hills that come down that we call the Eastern Townships. And what you have to know about that is Montreal is part of the Montérégie. They're sort of like extinct volcanoes rising out of the plain, Mont-Saint-Grégoire, Mont-Saint-Hilaire, Mont-Saint-Bruno, and Montréal, the mountain, the Royal Mountain. And of course, Rougemont is kind of like the king of all of them. And if anybody's listening from Quebec and they're from one of the other ones, they're mad at me now. But Rougemont has always been our apple paradise. And I always looked at that mountain and said, I don't know what it would take, but it's a great terroir. Michelle has just explained to us that they don't only bury the vines like Prince Edward County does, but they use geothermal. So Josh, will you give us something on the wine? I bought you some time there. Give us the terroir.
Oh, well, first of all, I just want to say that I'm really impressed. Great job. Like, I haven't had a chance to taste a lot of Quebec wines, but the last couple times I've had some, they're kind of blowing me away. First thing I'd like to say, I guess, would be, I like it. a lot. I can see the heat units in the summer. I can, you know, with the lower acid. I guess, what kind of soils are you growing on?
It's right. Well, you see the picture behind me. It's directly that's the parcel.
Okay.
As I mentioned, it's schist bedrock. You know, it's and a little bit of sand on top of it, but it's really a mix. And we when we planted this parcel, you know, it was with the, you know, big hammerhead and you know, and it's been tough too, but really a lot of you can feel the minerality into this product.
Yeah, what you have in Quebec is like what you have maybe all over our country, but I'll speak to Niagara, but I'm talking about Quebec. You have a thing, en français on dit remaniement, which means here it's the glaciers melting, which it was in Quebec too. But you know, you had a sea with these mountains pointing out of it. The Lake Champlain used to be the sea of la mer de Champlain, whereas we had Lake Iroquois, which all 5 lakes were one, right? So that, I mean, none of us are historians and geologists, but I mean, that's what we learned from other people. So you've got, as he said, one parcel that's very sandy, one that can be a little loamier, but all with lots of good gravel in it. That's for sure. I don't know the exact chemical breakdown, and Michel has 2 or 3 jobs. You know, he's got a lot to do. You're not also a geologist, but you know, it's up to us to figure out enough about our rocks to see what they taste like. So can we flip it to David, and can you give us some feeling for what you feel on either the minerality or the sense of place? Where would you put this? You did a great job with the East Coast.
Yeah, so I mean, first off, Michelle, great job. I really am enjoying this wine. If I was asked to describe what I thought a Quebec Chardonnay would be before this tasting, because this is my first, it would not have been this wine. There's a weight and a presence to it. It feels like the soil has some density to it and some structure to it, almost. Like it's got a little bit of clay loam in the soil in the way that the mid palate weight presents itself. That also could be from some barrel work, some stirring, etc. But I think there's also a lightness and an effortlessness to the wine. So yeah, great job. Really enjoying it. I hope to taste more Quebec vinifera for sure. That's delicious.
Yeah.
Those who've heard me talk in the last 5 years notice that I always try, while staying apolitical, to talk about, could we not erase borders? Today is about erasing borders. It's about being in London mostly, but also in New York, and we've been out in Calgary together, in Chicago, and a lot of us, and we notice that even some of the great writers who haven't traveled to Canada can blithely go from the Bachelder station to the Tantalus station and say, oh, I like that and I like that, and they don't realize we're 4,000 kilometers apart, right? And that something popped in my Libra head, which said, if they don't realize we're 4,000 kilometers apart, let's bring us closer together. And that kind of results in today, but it also results in a way of thinking about the world. And I would really like to see, I am so happy that the Rougemont de Paris happened with Stephen Spurrier, Bottle Shock, but it's my firmly held opinion that when that happened, Americans, and to a lesser extent Canadians, sort of forgot about France and focused on California. That was 30 years ago. And if we don't think about our country, think about those wine regions in Virginia and Maryland and New Jersey and New York. And you know, New York has like 4 wine regions. If you think Ontario and BC have a lot, you know, and it's like there's so much going on these glacial heritage and limestone that wraps around from North Fork, Long Island, up through Quebec, over through Prince Edward County, back down through Niagara, and not to the Finger Lakes right away, but Niagara escarpment stateside. It's the same friggin' escarpment. And there's about 20 wineries there doing their thing. And like I always say, we believe in a border with a wall that nobody put up. Well, there's a wall right now for COVID-19, but when it opens up, and I know, David, because I've lived out west, the same time as you, Cascadia, you know, you guys have a great thing going with Washington and Oregon, and you see that terroir goes down the left coast, and you're, you know, proud Canadian, but I mean, you've got a whole thing going on out there, which is terroir of the Pacific, don't you?
Definitely. I mean, I see it in, you know, not only in Chardonnay. In fact, I would argue that Chardonnay is most expressive right up where we are, in the northern part of or middle to northern part of the Okanagan, than it is in Washington or in Oregon. But I also think there's a wonderful commonality in the styles that are reflected in Riesling and Pinot Noir as well, and Syrah to a lesser extent in some of the hotter areas of both BC, Washington, and Northern Oregon. But you know, we're talking about Chardonnay, and I think Chardonnay, although does show terroir, really has found a home in the central to northern piece of the Okanagan, where we can retain some acidity and hang the grapes just a little bit longer for flavor without getting 15.5% alcohol.
If Anne Sperling of Southbrook, but Sperling is listening right now, or listens, and she's going to be sending you hugs and kisses, because she's always on at me about the northern.
Anne and I basically share a border for our vineyards of a road going in between, but we have extremely similar terroir.
And I know Craig McDonald of Peller, and also Daryl Brooker, also, and Taylor, all those folks, and of course Shane at Martin's Lane. These folks share a great love of the northern Okanagan, although there's lots of places like down where Blue Mountain is and Naramata Bench that I also love. I love most of the Okanagan for sure. I want to say one more thing. You guys said all the things about Quebec first, because I'm also Quebecois, now Ontarian. I've been an Oregonian and an Burgundian. I don't know who the hell I am, but I've been in Ontario for a long time. But I got to tell you, my thought is this terroir, I've got to find out if there's some dolomitic limestone in this, because this is, to me, closer to Niagara in mineral flavor than in any of your wines. And one more thing, I'm going to ask David to be the moderator for my wines and tell who to talk first, if you would, David. Throw you under the bus there. I would, you know, I really find a nice stoniness here and a nice richness. And we were on yesterday for a practice that was live for a few minutes. Very funny, because we weren't drinking wine or anything. It was just like people were saying, what the F are these guys doing? But when we went, we said, should we open before and taste to make sure the order is right? Because we had no idea how, especially Quebec would feel against Nova Scotia. We had no idea. I've tasted all the wines before, but I had no idea how I would feel, never on the same table. But we really wanted to go from east to west. As the map goes, you read a map from left to right, so you should have started with the Okanagan. But I think as the sun rises, we should, since the sun hits Nova Scotia first, we should go there first. And I gotta say, so far it's been a great order. And I remind everyone who's listening,
and showing this piece of land.
Oh, he's back. The man is...
Well, that was good. We heard the whole thing. You know, the funny thing is, I had a bad dream about this last night. It's like being, you can't find your exam room. David got on, we were on 15 minutes before all of us, and David got on and said, Steph, I got 50% of my battery, I should be okay. I had more than him, so I went, ha, ha, ha. But it drained right down, and I'm in the middle of the winery. We had to get a 30-meter extension. So there we go. So finish what you were saying, and I'll chime in.
Yeah, did we said crazy things, Thomas? Does it make sense what we've said?
It's perfect what you said, and I was just going to add to that very little. There's no new oak here, but there's a crazy reason. The Willms vineyard from Niagara on the Lake, I'm a real bench guy. I love the bench. And it was easy to love the bench because I came here from Oregon, from Lemelson Vineyards, an all organic project to do the Clos Jardin, which was all organic. I was there from 2004 2003 till 2010, and now again, as a matter of fact, since 17. But the point I want to make is I became such a bench guy. I never dissed Niagara-on-the-Lake. I never dissed Prince Edward County or North Shore Lake Erie, but I was just, you know, entitled about the bench. Let's put it that way. And so I thought if Bachelder was going to start to do, Bachelder's a micro-négociant. Unlike you guys, you know, we don't own our own vineyards. We love to, but we work really hard watching the vineyards and finding good parcels. And this one was planted in 83 Willms. And it was in the old 13th Street. The new 13th Street is doing amazing things under Jean-Pierre Collat with the Whitty family. Yeah. But the old 13th Street used to make really big and classy Chardonnays and Gamay, amongst other things. They had 4 partners, and the wines were a little different then because the vines were younger. And now they're old and they're a little virus. And, you know, going into Niagara-on-the-Lake for the first time, like, I love what Carl Kaiser in Ancienne does with the Montague Vineyard and what a lot of other people are doing down there. But for me, the bench minerality was so primordial. Well, what I learned and what you will learn from tasting Willms first, or whatever. Did you had Willms first and then Wingfield?
We actually went the other way. Sorry.
Well, then I'll do it too.
Wingfield, Wismer.
I saw the old vines on the front and figured we'd do that second.
Sure, that's good. It actually doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. What matters is, by the way, these are all 17s so far. Isn't that cool across Canada? We did not plan that part of it. But the thing is this. I wanted to hedge my bets. The bench here is very mineral and very linear and can make a broad Chardonnay that still has minerality, like, you know, the style of maybe something like in the Coteau, something like Chardonnay or Beaune or Meursault. But Niagara-on-the-Lake tends to make a blousier style. So what we did to mitigate that was older vines with deeper roots. But guess what happened? At the end of élevage, I had about 8 barrels of each of these, and I wanted to put out 4. And there's 25 cases in a barrel. I noticed that the Willms was taking to the oak the way Meursault takes to the oak. Everybody thinks that Meursault is over oak compared to Puligny-Montrachet and Chassagne and Saint-Aubin. It's just that it's broader and it kind of shows it in a different way. So some of the guys from the old 13th Street called me up and said, why did you use so much oak in the Willms, the second one? I'm like, there's no new oak. There's 1 second use and there's 1 third use barrel and there's 2 fourth use barrels. I had to take the new barrel out of Wismer, which could have held it, the Wismer-Wingfield, so that all 3 releases, including Saunders, which is the 3rd one, would all be the same. Because I like we're doing today, where I'm trying to start some kind of tenuous link between all of us. I'm trying to reach out the hand of friendship to Niagara-on-the-Lake and say, you guys count. There's a lot of really old families in Niagara-on-the-Lake who think, who are these new guys on the bench? And I'm like, come on, like, let's have more people doing single vineyards from Niagara-on-the-Lake and here. And as I say, every time anybody asks me, of course, Prince Edward County is fantastic. And as soon as somebody frees up a couple of tons, Bachelder will make a Prince Edward County wine. Do you see a big difference?
So Thomas, yeah. Just to comment on that, maybe I'll get Josh to talk about the second wine, to talk about the Willms, flavor profile wise. As he's pouring it, one of the things that I get, and going to that comment that you had about why did you put so much oak in this wine, I can see why they would think that. There's a very sort of creamy, coconutty, broad thing to the wine texturally, which would lend me to think that this had 15 or 20% new oak,
right? Even
though it hasn't, which is really interesting. But Josh, if you would want to give us a couple of comments on the Willms, please.
Yeah, first of all, yeah, I find I like the oak level for sure. I don't know, like, it's kind of interesting hearing your thoughts on new oak. on the different blocks. You know, it's something that we have to a lot of times look at here in Nova Scotia. It seems like our wines are delicate. A lot of times I want to pull the new barrels from the blend. So it's kind of interesting. A lot of times I feel like it's because our wines are a little more delicate, but then on your end, I'm hearing that maybe they're a little bigger, and that's why you're pulling away from the oak. So
yeah. Well, I'm pulling away from the oak. Like, if I did 3-4 barrel lots, Saunders, Beamsville bench. This is Vineland bench or 20 Mile bench, Wismer-Wingfield, and 4 Mile Creek is a Niagara Lake Willms. The Willms with one new oak in it, I was going for California style. And what you got to know about this is I take the part of the vineyard that has slightly a heavier crop and has slightly more mineral flavors. The other side, even with the old vines, is more tropical. And the Willms family, who are amazing, you know, lovely people who do mixed farming and chickens and guinea fowl and everything, they say to me, "Are you sure you want the greener side of the vineyard?" I go, "It's not green, it's gray." And so I think I got it better the next year. We said we wouldn't talk too much about winemaking, but when I say better, for me, it's never having a Bachelder stamp, a Thomas stamp. It's letting the terroir sing. And so rather, you know, we know a little more about making your first glass, the Wismer-Wingfield terroir sing, getting out of the way of the wine. So to your point, Josh, and I know some, especially from Quebec, sommelier, Michel knows a lot about this, they love the nature, natural wine, but they also love, even when you're making classic, the way we all do, I think, if I may put a label on us, which I don't like, but let's say, if we're making more classic European styles, that are really quite révélateur, really good, they show terroir, you know what, it's not a bad thing to have the new barrel on the lot and then kick it out down to your traditional level or your classique or whatever you want to call it. And even though it makes that level more expensive, it prepares a beautiful barrel for second year use, and it enriches your first level. And your first level has more barrels in it usually, so it can take it. So I just say, if there's any background noise in the selected cuvee, get that barrel out. Whether it's coconut or old barrel funk, mushroomy or varnish, get out of there and just release the part of the single vineyard that really sings. And that was my first try with Willms. So give me a chance, I'll get back there. But there you go. And I'm dying to get to the West Coast. Are we ready yet, David, or you want to say more things?
No, yeah, let's do it.
So, David, this is where I talked with Steph yesterday, and you've got a big choice to make here. Of course, I would pour the 19 before the 17 in a perfect world. There's no good way to pour things. But if you pour the 17, you have a straight lineage. So this is what we'll do. Pour the 19, we'll go to your 17, and we'll go back to another wine. Let's do it.
Correct.
19 first?
Yeah, let's go the 19 first. So talking of terroir, this particular wine comes from one single block of 3 clones of Chardonnay planted in 2013. So our youngest block. And it was an old apple orchard that was definitely not organic when we bought it. So it had a lot of steroids in the ground already. And we actually ended up taking a crop in the second year of that vineyard. We've made no additions apart from cover crop additions. And now we're just starting to see this vineyard come into some semblance of balance. Before that, it was too vigorous, and for the 19 vintage, the wine you're trying, we almost got 5 tons to the acre. And that was very much on purpose to try and bleed out some of that vigor and to make sure that we could pick it with acidity and still with some time on the vine to show terroir. If we dropped to 3 tons to the acre, I'd have been picking it around when we'd normally pick bubbles, and we'd have had all the potential alcohol and none of the flavor. So this particular wine, when we're tasting the grapes, I just said it's got this feel to it that it doesn't need any oak. So this sees really neutral barrels, so old puncheons, old barriques, 5-6-year-old barrels, and then half of it in stainless steel. I ferment it all wild in the hope of preserving terroir. And then we bottle it with the aromatic whites every year. So the élevage is only about 4 to 5 months. And then from the vintage, because I want to capture that fruitiness, that freshness, that same sort of sea breezy thing that you see in Nova Scotia. It's there in a different way. We have a little bit of limestone in our soil, and then it's a very fine particulate granite soil with large granite drop stones, because we're basically on the edge of the old glacial lake here at 490 meters. And so I wanted it to be the antithesis of most of the Chardonnay that's in this area of the bigger oakier, malo-y, buttery styles, and to have that nice, fresh, vibrant feel to the wine. Yeah. Do you want me to keep talking about the terroir on the 17, or?
Oh no, we're gonna.
No, let's talk about the 19 then.
Let's talk about the 19.
I like the fruit. I like the fruit that is ahead. You know, the apples or the lemon taste. You know, I really like it. You know, a little bit less the wood. We feel the stainless steel. You know, and the freshness of this product. We feel the fruit is ahead. You know, like that.
That's excellent. Excellent, Michel. You know, I think you go first, Josh. Go first.
Yeah, no, it's a nice wine. Definitely a lot bigger than the Nova Scotian for sure. Yeah, your choice not to use a lot of new oak or oak at all, and just to allow some of that fresher fruit aromatics to shine through. It's a beautiful expression, and yeah, I can feel like I'm in BC. So.
And I love this wine too, Josh. I agree. And I want to remind all of ourselves, including those listening, and we got some questions coming in, so we will get to those. I just want to say, though, that Chardonnay loves an oxygenative environment, not an oxidative so much. But these barrels here, I've got some big puncheons in front of me. We're talking earlier about going to bigger format wood. You want exchange of air. And none of us want to oak a wine. That's not a verb in any of our vocabularies, but we want to give enough élevage to get past the baby fat, you know, and get to the terroir. And David, I think you have here, in the sense that here you say it's a young release wine, but I'm totally getting the essence of it. I mean, people are using amphora, they're using clay, they're using a lot of, especially in France, a lot of cement, because that breathes. And you found a way to mix these things together, and also the crop yield, very important. But I do get a sense of minerality here, in the sense that I'm not sure I would be in BC. Josh, I know where you're coming from, which is, and what I think when I got cut off, and I must say this now because it's especially appropriate now, believe me, and I hope I see you guys all in your hometowns, but to meet up in Burgundy would be fun, because you start with Chablis and you start with Champagne, and you go to Chablis or Auxerrois, and you go down to the Côte de Beaune for your whites, and then you have the Mâconnais, okay? And I've seen so many permutations of all this. If you taste things in the wrong order, you can sort of diss anything. And if you taste things in the right order, you can love things, right? And so there's no way, Josh, that I found your wines light at all. There's no way. There was intensity and spirit and energy and dry extract. There's no way. And there's no way.
Absolutely.
I find, and I don't find this wine heavy at all. I find this one delicious. This is the wine I start my evening with if I haven't already had Quebec and Nouvelle-Écosse. You know, I mean, it's like, come on, this is a lot to take in, even for me. So, because I have traveled to all the regions, you know, often. Can we move on to the second wine?
Sure. Just before, if we go to Burgundy, Thomas, you'll be our guide.
Yes.
Oh, I'd love to.
Absolutely.
So while you're tasting this wine, oh, this makes me so sad happy. The great local sommelier, Teresa McDonald, says, if you do something like this again, figure out how we can all purchase the out of Provence wines ahead of time. And to Michel makes. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, to answer that question, put pressure on all the provinces and the federal government to allow us to do so. We'd love to do that. Coordination of all of us doing that would be amazing.
Yeah.
And I would like to say, you know, this is a total love, passion thing we're doing here. But of course, go online and get wines from Tantalus, get wines from Lightfoot&Wolfville, and get wines from Coteau Rougemont, because part of the way of bringing the country together is to get wines in your cellar that you don't have to take a frickin' trip to do. Don't wait for the liquor boards to get them in. This country is exploding. I am personally going to support the liquor boards big time. They supported me in everything I've done here, even when I was out of the country. But I got to say, it's a crazy new time. We're doing this instead of sitting together. We would not be able to talk right now because there'd be so many people at the booths at the I4C. We've got the best weather ever, and I'm sitting in my cellar sweating my ass off talking to you guys about technology. That said, this would have cost $10,000 10 years ago, and now I just had to get a Zoom Pro account, you know. So it's really cool.
Yeah, very cool. So the terroir of this the 17, which it's really fun to see everyone pouring 17s, and now that they've each had, you know, a couple of years in bottle, they really start to sing. This is 2006 plantings and some 1985 plantings. Right next to a cemetery on our property that has some real history. All the roads around us, all the old properties around us, you know, are all named after the people in this cemetery. So it's a really nice old piece of land and a fairly old piece of Chardonnay for this area. This has some really tight, lean, very fine silty soils and lenses of clay in this little area compared to slightly looser soils on the first one. But still the same vineyard, just a different block, couple of 100 kilometers away. Michelle's dog, that's awesome. So this wine sees about 25% new oak, most of which are puncheons now. There's always one barrique in there, but I've gone away from barriques and gone more to puncheons. And then the rest are progression right down to about 4 or 5 years old. 100% wild fermentation and no batonnage. I find if we stir the Chardonnays on these soils, they get very dimethyl sulfide, which basically, for those who don't know, is more of a creamed corn, canned bean kind of fault to the wines, which I really don't like in Chardonnay. Some people seem to like that stirred style. I prefer to leave these wines just on their lees and leave them alone. I think that they express terroir when they are left alone, Chardonnays. So they literally just go into the barrel, checked occasionally, and then racked and bottled about 11 months after the vintage, with hopefully, apart from topping the barrels, very little done to the wines. Then that means we've grown it right, and we don't need to do anything winemaking wise.
So David, I'm going to go first because I never get to go first being the moderator. I would say this is a fabulous wine. I'm not saying a fabulous BC wine, I'm saying a fabulous wine. And, you know, I think it is, you said it yourself, but it is fair to say that you've lightened up your touch over the years and focused more on terroir. But part of it is the winds have changed for all of us. I'm using less sulfur. I've always been wild yeast. Of course, get organic vines when I can get them, or grow them if I'm a grower, which I have been and I am with kiosques. But I mean, the thing is that, and you know, if you kind of get out of the way of the wine and you try to figure out, that's what I was saying about Meursault and Willms. You have figured you need to use larger format. I've got larger format right here. There's my puncheons right there, right? But I mean, I'm not sure that's what Niagara needs. Like Burgundy and Niagara are doing pretty well with 228s. It's how you manage that resource. If puncheons are what you need to do this, then keep doing it. And also, sommeliers and wine critics are rewarding us all for backing off on the wood, keeping it in wood, but just enough new wood to renew the fleet. And as I said earlier, maybe taking the new oak down to the next level, and then prize that barrel the second year. This is fabulous. Josh, over to you. What do you think going from the Okanagan to the Bay of Fundy? Wow, blows my mind.
Wow, quite a drive. I wouldn't want to do it, but yeah, no, I love the wine. You were just quickly talking about how you don't do batonnage. Do you find like your primaries happen relatively quickly, or like most wild fermentations, do you find this is happening all through the winter and spring? Or
I just sulfured my 2019 about 2 weeks ago once it finally finished sugar.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, so when I say I don't do batonnage, that's maybe not completely true. Right towards, you know, when we're getting down to 0 bricks and starting to go negative, they might get a little bit of a tickle. But I often find that the wines here, and maybe to do with the makeup from the terroir, all seem to stop fermenting sugar, go into malolactic, then kind of sit around and don't do much in the winter, and then in the spring they'll finish off the last 10 grams of sugar, yet the VA will stay very manageable and doesn't really rise. So a few years ago I was working the wines a lot more and worrying about that a lot more, feeling like I had stuck fermentation, etc. But now I just let them overwinter a little bit sweet and nice and cold, and then in the spring they seem to have detoxified and clarified themselves enough to just push on through.
Well, I think I may have to translate there, and we're staying in English. I'm just going to say that detoxified. So whether it's late sprays or something else, Chardonnay sticks and doesn't finish its sugar anywhere in the world. I've got 5 barrels of 19 that are slowly ticking down, still working. And when you're wild yeast, or even when you're not wild yeast, Chardonnay can be slow, but the rewards are great if you wait. But like David says, wait. Make sure your volatile acidity or the vinegar smell is not rising. To the point of batonnage, doing Bachelder in Burgundy, Oregon, and Niagara, imagine the learning curve for me. Worked in all these places, but you taste the juice on the press in all 3 regions. Now, we're concentrating on Niagara now. And I mean, in a post-Greta world where we're going towards, like, who knows how much travel people are doing in the future, it doesn't feel very cool to be a flying winemaker, but I learned so much. But one of the things I learned was not to stir, because stirring is such a stylistic thing. The wines will finish anyway, and I didn't want, when I was not someplace, somebody stirring for me. I have to also do very short cold soaks when I'm trotting around the world. So by the way, I don't do those anymore. And you know what I think? We need to come back and do Pinot Noir. Michel, are you going to plant Pinot Noir, or how are we going to get you back on here?
No Pinot Noir. No, we tried it. We tried it, Thomas, and either it's our terroir or the weather, but it didn't work. We had it for 4 years. We made 1 small batch of rosé with it, and that's it. You know, after that, we took it away and we planted Vidal instead. It didn't work at all at our place. So I don't know. Either that we're doing something not good, or really the climate was too tough for Pinot Noir in Quebec. For sure.
So I promised people who asked me what we were doing that we would do this. You guys, we've all done a good job of not talking too much about winemaking. We've talked more about terroir. I invite you to go from the Tantalus straight away to the, there's only one to go to. We have to go back to the Coteau Rougemont. Not because it's too far to go back to l'Ancienne, but because the Coteau Rougemont from Quebec will now, we'll go more than halfway back, Coteau Rougemont. We have just a very few minutes left. Most of the remarks that are coming in are about how the hell do we do this? How the hell do we get your wines? We can't say to people, order all our wines and we'll see you again, because that's a lot of money. But we can think about this and we can watch the world as it evolves. We don't need all of us to comment here. Does anybody have a strong opinion about how it tastes the same or how it tastes different after BC? And it can be me. Give me a sec. It can be me. You go.
For me, there's more similarity across the board here than difference in a lot of ways. There's subtle difference in terroir, but I also feel that maybe the four of us have a similar hand in how we make wine, and therefore the feel of the wine is. And I believe humans are part of the terroir as well. It's not just the dirt and the weather, etc. It's also who has a hand involved in how they grow, when they pick, and how they make the wine. And I feel that although this has maybe a little more creaminess, and then the presence of maybe a little more acidity than my 2017, but not by much. I think I celebrate the similarity more than the difference when I come back to it.
Yeah, I think we've learned that the terroirs are different, and we can celebrate them. And I think we've got to figure out something that ties the country together more often. We have to have our own lives in the Okanagan and Ontario and Quebec and Nouvelle-Écosse, but we have to also figure out a way to not make distance. And I think we all know that this time in the last 3 months has been an intensely creative time for the planet. You know, like I'm hoping for something, not only the vaccine, but something crazy like nylon after World War II. I'm hoping for a few crazy discoveries that are going to change this planet, right? But I mean, meantime, we're joining together just with our computers, at least those of us who charge their computers, to get together. And I mean, it's about 12 minutes before the Zoom call, and before 6, and it's 12 minutes before 3 in BC. What is it now?
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah, I can't see the time on my computer.
So this counts as day drinking for Mr. Patterson, and Quebec's the same time as us.
Radio, Thomas.
And Josh, you're already at nearly 7 o'clock, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So listen, you guys.
Did you have some questions there, Thomas? Was there some questions that have popped up?
Yeah. This is a good one. This one's
questions. Yeah.
I kind of held this one back by the way, Brian Johnson said David hoped to see you in September, COVID allowing. Brian Johnson said that. So let's hope for all of that. I've been trying to get back east. My daughter runs a lobster shack on the Halifax Pier that we thought wouldn't work because they depend on cruise ship. What's a cruise ship? You know, what's an airplane? But it's apparently doing well. Dave's Lobster Shack. I want to get out there and do something with you guys. But here's a tough one, and I'm going to throw it at Michel first. I can't read this whole thing. It's too funny. But Gary says, when you start a wine and it doesn't work out and you have to pour it down the drain and start over, when you make a bad wine and you have to try it again, how do you see your learning curve? So I think, Michel, you answered it for Pinot Noir. You had to turn it into rosé. Is there any other thing you want to share about that?
We had like crazy experience, it's as I mentioned, it's a young industry in Quebec, and we're still learning every day. We've made terrible mistakes over our career over the last few years. It costed us wines, but we put it on the back of experience, But we're learning from our colleagues, from the industry. We need to stay very close and learn from each other. We don't see colleagues like competition. We learn from each other, and that's how we make a stronger wine industry in Quebec and in Canada. So yes, we all make mistakes, and sometimes we'll declassify the wine because we don't want to associate our name to this bottle, So we'll put it against, we'll put it in a big batch and sell it as as a table wine, and that's it. We cannot sell it as premium. So we've made terrible decision, Thomas, and I'm sure all of us did. And hey, it's part of life. Who doesn't?
And it's like, and also we're all out on the edge. We're all doing wild yeast. Wild yeast is the best thing for delivering terroir for sure, because they're the yeast that grow on the skins of the grape, that little flowery bloom that you see even on table grapes in the supermarket. But you know, it's fraught with difficulties, but we learned to manage it, and they grew in the vineyard, so they know how to ferment the grapes, and we have to believe that. I remember one of the great Kiwis, just blanking on his last name, Steve, right near Felton Road. He did a few projects. He came as an assistant to Lemelson when I was there, and he said, in the new, he's about my age, Dave, you'll figure out who it is, Steve C.
No, yeah. Yeah, I know exactly who he's talking about. I'm blanking on his last name too. I worked with him at Archery Summit.
That's right. And he said to me, Steve said, he helped me through the 99 vintage at Lemelson, and he said, you cannot get a wild ferment going here because this is a new, essentially cement building. It was a friggin' big gravity place like Mauritaz's place ×3. And I said, it's going to happen. It doesn't come from the building, it comes from the grapes. The mass on those grapes is way bigger than what's in the building. And by God, the fermentations were slow, but they kicked off. It was a fabulous year. We had 3-year-old vines, and it was like amazing wine. And so it's like, it can happen. And I think we've got, I'm gonna just hear, somebody else says, fabulous idea, pre-order the tasting pack. So Canada is a great country. Do this session again. Maybe there's a way. We got to fess up something here. When we all traded wines, I said, do not send me your wines. Actually, it came from Coteau Rougemont. Let's not just send the wines of the tasting. Let's send other wines. So I have all of your wines in my cellars. I have, and I want to tell you guys, when you two, David and Josh, drink the hybrids from Coteau Rougemont, remember this, that in a warmer place, like Niagara or like the Okanagan, but still cool climate, the hybrids are gross. But in a place where we all barely get Pinot and Chardonnay ripe, we make great terroir wines. But when you barely get L'Acadie and Céval Blanc ripe, they give great terroir wines, and they spit out the terroir of the regions, Josh, you know, because you have to do them both, right? So it's very.
You'll be surprised by the hybrids that we've sent you guys. I've sent the Saint Pepin, which is an hybrid developed by University of Minnesota. Very close to a Sauvignon taste profile. You know, lemon. Cool. You know, you'll be surprised. We've got Vidal as an hybrid as well. We're at 85% hybrids in Quebec, and it works well for us.
But they express your terroir just as those in Nova Scotia express. Sure, Nova Scotia grows amazing Chardonnay and Pinot and other grapes, but those, when I drink Tidal Bay, the best Tidal Bays, which is their sort of global appellation, their Bourgogne Blanc, I'm amazed, you know, and we have to wrap it up here. But is there a list of wines that we can use to order from the websites? So I'm going to go over it. Okay, everybody fast. Josh, read your 2 wines, please. What were they?
Yeah, we had the 2014 Blanc de Blanc Brut. We also had the 2017 Ancienne Chardonnay.
Okay, Michel, what did you bring?
I brought the Chardonnay La Côte, which is our premium Chardonnay from Coteau Rougemont. You can order it online at coteaurougemont.ca.
And try out their Saint Pepin, try out their Vidal, and try out their Mousseux, which is their bubbly. Bachelder, we had our Wismer-Wingfield West. It's a sub-parcel of a sub-parcel, and those are 1999 vines. And we had the Willms vineyard from 1983. And what did Tantalus bring to the party?
So we had the 2019 beer Chardonnay that we just released in our tasting room and online last week.
Yeah.
And then we have the 2017 Tantalus Chardonnay, our flagship Chardonnay. And I believe we're almost moving to the 18, but if you go on the website in the next couple of weeks, we'll still have a bit of the 17 available.
Well, thanks to you guys for bringing the country closer together. And when I think of that most of you would have been here not only for the Cool Climate Chardonnay celebration, which is always 1 week before the international Pinot Noir celebration in Oregon, but you would have been here for the Cool Climate, what's it called again? Last Saturday.
Cool Climate Viticulture and Enology Symposium or something.
Just to show what Cool Climate is, last time it was held in Brighton, England, on the southern coast of England. Mm-hmm. And so now Niagara was the next one. So, I mean, I taste really cool in all these wines, and I'm really happy. And I don't know what's happening. I think the way the I4C is seeing it, okay, and I'm not the guy to quote. I'm the guy who had the idea. Harold Teal of Hidden Bench ran with it. Mary's still on the board, but I got to tell you this. I consider this 10th anniversary that we're participating in right now 10A, and I think next year will be 10B. My thought is they'll leave us wineries first choice. Are we in again next year? But if they are, we're doing a lunchtime event together.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
1 year from right now, 4 hours ago, lunchtime event. You're on.
Yeah,
we'll be there for sure. I'm in.
Okay, everybody go to the Zoom event. Click on coolchardonnay.org, go to the Zoom event, and give them some love. There's going to be people all around the world looking at this, including everybody on the screen right now. And Mary, who's swilling all of your wine, she can't decide. She keeps waving from the window. We have to close the door to keep the echoing out. Love you guys. Thanks for coming.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Team Canada.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Wow.